Hey, welcome to a very special Upland Nation podcast. You'll find out why in a couple minutes, but we're going deep into northern Nevada for wild chukars. A few insights, a lot of fun, reliving opening weekend with my music school buddy Dave, and more to come. Hope you learned something or are entertained or got a question or two from our recounting of at least what we can remember from last weekend. But more for everybody as well. I'll have that Upland Nation Puzzler question and a prize. Some news you can use about dogs and how they communicate with us. And then we'll debrief your opening weekend. It's all coming up here on the Upland Nation podcast. Made possible by RuffLand Performance Kennels, Happy Jack Dog Care Products, Huron, South Dakota's Ringneck Nation, and Dr. Tim's Natural Performance Dog Food. Make a note of this, sageandbreaker.com. They're one of our sponsors and have been for a long time because they have gun care products that will last you a lifetime and probably your heirs' lifetimes as well. From gear, like shotgun cases, to tools, to chemicals that are non-toxic and will take care of the metal on your shotguns. Learn more about them at sageandbreaker.com. Get on the mailing list. You'll get first notice of everything that comes out, including, by the way, their very, very infrequent sales. And our friends at Huron, South Dakota, the Ringneck Nation. Learn more about what they have to offer at HuntHuronSD.com. I've been to it many times, a participant, an observer, and a commentator in one way or another at the Ringneck Festival and Bird Dog Challenge. That's November 4 through 6. Whether it's friendly competition or the chance to show off for you and your friends, learn more about all they have to offer at HuntHuronSD.com. One of the things I love most, 140,000 acres of public access. HuntHuronSD.com. Well, this is a first, and I hope it's the first of many. We're going to debrief a little bit on a trip my buddy and I made. Everybody out there, meet David Coe. David Coe, meet everybody else out there. Are you with me? There you are. Good. Now, just as a bit of background, I want to tell everybody that we went to music school together, and out of that, you instigated a habit that's been recurring every year in one way, shape, or form since then, almost. Boys' weekend, first for fly fishing, and now one for fly fishing and one for bird hunting every year. We meet halfway between your house down there in Central California and my house up here in Central Oregon. And this year we stopped at a place we know a little bit, but we explored a lot of new parts of it as well up in northern Nevada. Does that sum it up, David?
That's pretty much it.
Okay, good. I want to make sure because I know you're a stickler for accuracy on everything except the latitude and longitude of where we were.
Yeah, right.
So, northern Nevada, your old Labrador, Buster, my youngish wire hair flick, and I and you, we're not getting any younger either. But in dog years, we'd be dead.
Well, yeah. In dog years, Buster's probably 80-something, I think. So, of course, every time you hear a calculation for how to figure that out, it's different. So I'm not sure that you can really use those terms, but Flick's definitely the young dog of the bunch.
Yeah, and showing off.
But they're all old dogs.
Yeah,
so.
and fun to run them both together. Flick just loves playing with a dog his size, and Buster is that and a little bit more. So that worked out pretty well. Let's just first set the stage here. We're in northern Nevada. Anybody who knows me knows probably a little bit more closely where it is than that, but there are dozens of little mountain ranges in what they call the basin and range country of Nevada out there. And we are basically at the foot of one, looking at 2 or 3 others, and stark, desolate country to a lot of people. Sagebrush, bitter brush, a little rabbit brush here and there, and a couple of cactuses once in a while. In fact, I pulled a couple spines out of Flick day before yesterday.
After you left yesterday, I saw a couple of little, I'm not sure what type of cactus they were. They were little round, about 6 inches in diameter, and I hadn't seen them before, but I wondered that we hadn't gotten the dogs stuck with something at some point. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like Flick took care of that.
Knock wood, just a couple, and it sure beats porcupines, skunks, or mountain lions. So counting our blessings on all of that. So this is
all the things that they roll in.
yeah. Then there's that. You know, like I said, some people would look at that and say, "Why would anybody want to go there?" But we keep going. And you know, I have my own reasons, but I'm also interested in your reasons. What do you like about that area that I like to think maybe I showed you the first time or two?
Well, you did. I think that you coaxed me up there. We were in southern Oregon instead of northern Nevada, but that's just a line. And it's just, well, in Wyoming and Montana, they call it big sky country, but there's a lot of sky in that neck of the woods too. That and the more you open your eyes and wander around, the more history you see, little clues here and there, and there's just it's got a majesty that's unique, and it certainly brings us back. Plus, there's birds.
Yeah, and knock wood, this was a great opening weekend for both of us in many ways. We'll get into that, but you know, we might just start. Actually, let's just start with that. We got there the night before the opener in Nevada, and the weather was good. It was crowded where we were, but most of those people were doing something other than chukar hunting. Did we? I don't think we saw anybody anywhere. We saw some old shells and maybe a footprint or two, but beyond that, we pretty much had every place we went to ourselves.
Pretty amazing that way. We tromped around and covered a lot of miles, and never had to go past a spot because there was another car parked there or a truck. Never saw another hunter. Never heard a shot in the distance. For opening weekend, it was pretty amazing.
And, you know, a lot of people would say, well, it was droughty this year. The reports weren't so good from that area. I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'm not even going to bother going. And, you know, in the course of our 5 nights down in that country, we ran into 2 other parties at that tavern over the course of 4 days, I think, that were also chukar hunters, and they were frustrated. And we know that you kill birds with boot leather, not with shotgun shells. But you know, they were putting in their miles as well, and they were just in the wrong place at the right time, and we were the opposite, I guess.
We've paid our dues in that regard over the course of time. We just had a good, lucky year this year, I think, so far.
Well, let's talk about that, because I've told you, heard me. I was calling Karen the one time we had cell phone service, and I said this trip was epic in so many regards. Number one, I was finally hitting some birds with my shooting. Number two, we found a bunch of birds, but there was way more to it than that. What are some of the other things that just popped up that to you made it an epic trip?
Well, of course, whenever you and I get together, it's a special experience because we have a lot of history together and we get along so well. And anytime you're out with the dogs, that is an end unto itself. But we have seen some really spectacular country and wondered, well, what happens if we go over there, or how do you get over there? And we just keep following up on it. And I think we're starting to hone our instincts a little bit, because we seem to, when we follow those what ifs, it seems to pay off more often than it did in the past. we'll probably have a 5-year drought on birds that'll prove it wrong.
Hey, don't jinx it.
It's seems like maybe after 30 or 40 years, we're starting to figure it out.
Well, you're right. And we did agree to that a few times. We're walking around in places where, literally within a half mile of the truck, we're finding a bird or two or 50. And I think you're right. I think we're looking at that thing from a distance in the binoculars, and then we're looking at it from up close. And there are a few things that seem to be, I guess I'll call them critical factors for a chukar population. One of them, of course, I'll just call it wide open spaces. It's got to be uninhabited by anything civilized. Another one is the rock piley kind of stuff, although that's all relative. They do like to have rocks around them, and they like to have a slope. But I think the thing that we really hit on this year was how much cheatgrass we found. And that was in a drought year, but everywhere we looked, that
was the secret. Yeah, find and feed. And then on top of that, we're getting a little better at taking into consideration the weather of the moment. The day that it was hellacious windy, we didn't hunt the ridge tops, we hunted the sheltered spots, and things along those lines really save you a lot of boot leather, so to speak. If you can go to the right spot first instead of stumble into it after 10 miles of tromping around, then that helps.
Yeah, because if you're not a chukar hunter, you may not realize this, but I'm looking at some notes I took on the first day alone. My German wire-haired pointer Flick ran 17 and a half miles. And we're doing about 1.5. He's doing about 2.5 to 3 miles for every mile we walk, but we're still putting in a lot of miles, and they're uphill and downhill miles. The other thing that I think we've done over the years is we've become a little bit more stealthy about this stuff, and we've all learned this the hard way, I think. I'll never forget going up another creek a little bit north of there, and you know which one I mean. It starts with a C. And seeing a chukar on the top of a rock. And as soon as I saw him, of course, he saw me, and he told everybody at the bottom of that rock, let's get out of here. So being a little bit more stealthy, that means being quiet, maybe being a little strategic in how you approach the spots where you think the birds are going up over and then coming back down, or looking for the leeward side of some of those rocks. I think it's all paying off, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Of course, like I say, hunting with the dogs is a big part of things. And when your dog gets to be where my dog is, and he's just, most of the time he's following me instead of leading the way like he normally would, just because he's old and a little worn out and a little out of shape. He'll be better by the end of the season, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a limiting factor that in a way can work to your advantage. Better to have one dog working close and one dog working out like our pair were this weekend than to have two wide-ranging dogs that are going in opposite directions, especially if they're not particularly quick to respond to commands. Now, your dogs are always well-trained, and my dog's too old to get it. So we're okay that way this year.
Yeah. It worked.
We've seen two dogs working too far, and not always, two different dogs, not the ones we got now. Hasn't always worked out that well, but it's always been fun regardless.
Well, and we did learn that lesson a few times last weekend as well. Flick, he's a big runner, and he's still relatively young, and it was his first chukar hunt of the year. So he thought he could get a lot closer to some of those bunches than he should have, and he learned his lesson. And that's one of the things we'll talk about a little bit more down the road in this discussion as well, is what he learned over the course of 4 days of hunting wild birds. But he busted a bunch, and we didn't get those shots. And so you reminded me that one of my mantras is close your left eye, because as many of you know, I'm left eye dominant, but I shoot righty. And when I miss, it's usually because I didn't close my eyes. So the mantra was close your left eye. And then I realized later I could use the same first word but pronounce it different. Close. That's what I want Flick to do. So I brought him in a lot more and just cut him loose as we got to the really birdie stuff. And that helped a few times as well. You know, on that first day, I was in the right place at the right time more often than you, but you got your share of shots as well. Is there any of those that are just indelibly etched in your mind?
Well, of course, the ones that you miss, you never forget. And that first bird I shot on this trip was kind of pleasing because, like I say, Buster, being old and a little beat up, he wasn't quite as active in the actual hunt, but I couldn't find the downed bird. I searched and searched, and of course, it turned out I'd marked it 20 yards short of where it actually fell. And then we went back later, and even though Buster wasn't as active in the actual hunt, he picked up the scent, and I knew when we were getting close because of the change in his body language. He shed 5 years as soon as he smelled the bird. So that was fun, watching him know that the bird was there and getting his help in retrieving the dead bird, even though he wasn't as active in some of the aspects of the hunt as he would have been in days gone by.
Well, I want to before I forget to talk about this one. This happened on about the third day. I think we were in that spot. Okay, you know, you've been there. You see that road coming down the ridge line, and Dave, you know where I'm talking about. It was just a little north of Factograph Point. That's what I'm calling it, or Factoglyph Point, because I thought at one point those were giant petroglyphs up there, but they're not. But it was worth the climb because we found more chukar droppings up there last year than we've ever seen. I mean, it was
a bat cave with guano. I mean, you probably could have, if you could sell the stuff, you could have made a fortune just with the chukar poop that was at the base of that cliff.
So we were a little bit north of that, and we'd been driving past that place for a few years, and there's a road coming down there, and the problem is there's no way to get to that road, we thought. Turns out, if you just go up on the road outside of the campground we were in, and you're brave, and you have new tires with Kevlar sidewalls, you can actually go over the top and down that road. And we did. And I'll tell you, I was rewarded. You were rewarded. We had an incredible time on that side. I want to close out this segment with just that bunch where we were down below and we were actually pushing quail, and we got those and we had fun with that. And someday we'll talk about that as well. But then you came up the far side along that piece of water of that point, and then I came up the other side. And I'll start this off, but the only reason it worked is because of you. So we get up there and Flick hits a point. And it's you know, it's pretty rough ground and it's a bit of a slope, and he hits that point and 6 or 8 chukars got up, I think it was, and they all survived. But they survived by interesting you on the other side and me on this side. And because I missed, but Flick had done such a great dog, I do what I advocate in many cases, and that is I pulled out one of the quail I had in my vest and I lobbed that out there and told Flick to retrieve it instead. And he didn't know any better. He thought I was a great shot again. So that worked out great. But then you come around and you're thinking you see some of those birds up higher, right? Is that how that worked?
Well, the first time I saw them was when you and Flick flushed them. I ended up dropping one of those birds just past shooting. They were cooperating to fly past me. And then I was just off kind of exploring, and you were chasing birds. You saw a bird, if I remember right, up on the slope above you. So you went up there and ended up putting those birds back up a second time. And one of them was a flying probably 40 feet off the ground and heading the opposite way pretty quick, and you nailed it, and it dropped, bounced about 4 feet, but out of sight from where you were standing, and I marked it and led you in to find to make the retrieve, or you and your dog.
Yes. And that was probably the high point of the trip in many ways for me, but I will talk more about some of the other high points because it was just one of those trips. That one was gratifying for a bunch of reasons. It was kind of almost everybody on the team was involved in one way or another, and it worked out so well. I'd forgotten it. Do you know why I forgot you shot that first bird? I didn't hear it. I think we pulled the trigger at the same time.
Could be, because I don't think they all got up quite at once, and so I was shooting at the first ones to flush, and you were still trying to drop something in the in the leftovers from the cubby that still hadn't gotten up.
Well, we're just getting started here at the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. That is my good buddy from music school and ever since, Dave Coe. Dave will be back with us. He gets a break right here to relax and save his vocal cords while I talk a little bit more about some of the important stuff that pays the bills around here. First off, if you haven't looked at the Patreon page, check it out. See if that kind of a membership, premium membership, is worth it to you. Patreon, patreon.com/Upland Nation. Learn more about all the access, the previews, the sneaky stuff you get, and a new Upland Nation podcast sticker. It's on its way right now. This part of the podcast is brought to you in part by HappyJackInc.com. You know, with hunting season on, all the things that can scratch, bite, cut, or inflame your dogs outside, well, they got something for all of them, from pad coat to seal and heal to skin balm to their flea beacon. Take a look at all of the ways they can probably save you a trip to the veterinarian in many cases at HappyJackInc.com. And Dave will attest to this because he was mooching off me the whole time. My RuffLand Kennels water holder. Yeah, it holds about 9 gallons. It looks like a storage tray, and it stores all sorts of things in it, but we kept that thing topped off every day as we went out into the Chukar Hills so that we can top off our own canteens and then also keep our dogs watered. And in one case, I even hosed off Flick with that thing on a very, very hot day, and it worked extremely well. Learn more about all of the stuff that RuffLand Kennels has to offer, and that's RUFF, just like your dog would say it, RuffLandKennels.com. By bird hunters, for bird hunters. They are figuring out new stuff every day that's going to make your life a little bit easier. That's the whole point, and that's what they're all about. RuffLandKennels.com. So my music school buddy, Dave Coe, is sitting in his man cave, which is, I want to say, he is surrounded by antique musical instruments. Dave, just look to your left and tell me what you're seeing right now.
Oh, God. Well, there's about half a dozen deer racks up on the wall.
Okay, well, we didn't study that at the conservatory.
But there's an antique oboe and an antique flute and an antique clarinet, all about 200 years old, and a whole shelf full of flutes and just mostly woodwinds. And an electric bass that I haven't learned to play yet, but I'm sitting there waiting.
Well, by the time we get together, and we did, folks, we did, I confess, I finally had been threatening for years to bring a guitar, and it turns out we both brought one and had a little fun with that. But next time, either bring that bass or bring your Ophiclyde.
Well, the Ophiclyde's on to my right, so
okay. That... And if you don't know what that is, look it up, everybody. Back to Northern Nevada chukar hunting. I just got to tell you, I love traveling, for hunting at least. I used to not I didn't like traveling for business, and luckily I don't have to do near as much as I do now. As I have to do now, but anyway, just traveling in that country is spectacular. Dave, you said big sky. Montana's got nothing on northern Nevada in that regard. But there's all that other stuff, and whether it was this trip where we saw those wild donkeys, first time I've seen wild donkeys in Nevada, by the way. What else is there in that country that has really piqued your interest?
Oh God, well, it's always interesting to keep your eyes open for arrowheads. Although most of that country is public land, so you have to leave them where you find them. But there's old homesteads, and those willow corrals that are on some of the old homesteads are fascinating. Just a lot of history. Plus, I think you used the word stark before. It's stark, but it's a stark beauty. It's the weather changes fast. The cloud formations are spectacular and unusual. Sometimes there's lenticular clouds that almost look alien, and the wispy cirrus clouds and the huge thunderheads. It's just the sky. Just watching the sky during the day and the stars at night is enough to keep you interested and fascinated. But and then like I say, I always come back to, then there's birds.
Yeah, there are. And one of the place that you called the Buffalo Jump, that I think I made up another name for it after that last busted covey at the bottom of it, is another example how wild it can be. I mean, this is a place literally where there's a sheer rock cliff, but there's enough nearby that you can understand why a cow might get there and then stumble and then end up at the bottom and soon become a pile of bleached bones. The Wild West is alive and well in places like this, isn't it?
Oh gosh, yes indeed. Makes you wonder some of the changes in the land over the course of time, what it would have been like before the advent of cattle ranching out there. But it's just, like you say, it's the Wild West. Some of those old homesteads that you stumble across in ranch buildings where, well, you said you knew somebody who supposedly would trap coyotes and turn them loose in one of those willow corrals and just feed them through the winter until their coats got bushy enough to make a few more bucks from the pelts.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters out there. I'll never forget drinking beer around a campfire once and watching these two flashlights coming up the road. By the time they get there, you understand why they were so wiggly on the way up. The guys are about 85 years old and old, broken down cowboys from way back. So we're sharing a drink or five with them, and one of the cowboys is telling story after story after story, and I'm realizing, hey, I know that guy. I just read his biography. And he had lived out in that country his entire life, used to ride 80 miles on his horse to, not really 80, but 30 miles to the Saturday night dance all night, get up and come back, and then ranch the rest of the week. This is the kind of guys who are still out there in many ways, and still living the life that their ancestors were living 100 years ago. That guy, in fact, Cactus Smith was his name, and his distinction was his great-grandparents were the last fatality in one of the Indian wars in that country.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And then, of course, his current day compatriot, David, who we met Friday night, or was it Saturday night, still doing it out there. Still a wrangler, yep.
Those guys, professional cowboys, are still alive and well in that neck of the woods.
Life is good. So we're sitting there at the campground, and this was last year when we were there, and we get out of the hot spring, which is really more like a tepid spring. And and the guy next to us says something like, well, if this was closer to civilization, it'd be a national park. What do you think he was thinking about when he said that?
Well, some of the landmarks in that part of the country are so spectacular. I mean, you remember a year ago, we were just you see something off in the distance, and it's not really that terribly far away, but you don't really see all the details. And we were just driving around doing a little exploring, and got out of the car and walked up and saw scenery that just was unbelievably breathtaking. And if you didn't know, it was there, and you didn't happen to just take the right dirt road, it's unbelievable the things that are out there just waiting to be seen that are not widely famous but are still just as spectacular as anything on the planet, maybe on a little bit of a smaller scale. But if something's, if you've got one canyon that's 5,000 feet tall and another that's 500 feet tall, and you're standing at the top or the bottom, it's the impact is not that different. So
yeah,
it's what's out there.
Well, I think you're describing the place that we actually were at both ends of it this last week, at one point or another, and I can't help but think of Edvard Grieg's Hall of the Mountain Kings from the Peer Gynt Suite. For the entrance, the gate, the Hall of the Mountain King there it's just mind-boggling that people don't know about those places.
Yep, and they're out there. And I would never have guessed, it's such an outlier, not that there isn't other spectacular things in that country, but most of it's more understated and just has to kind of work its way into your soul before it has the real impact. But this spot is almost beyond comprehension in some ways, yeah. So, and those things are out there.
They are, and that's in large part one of the great reasons to go hunting, besides killing a bird and watching your dog work, or maybe the opposite. We ought to flip those over. Let's get back to the bird hunting, because I want to touch on a couple things. And the first one is that last day in the morning, we were back, at the other end of that gorge. Yep. And we were close enough together finally, and I think I was trying to get your attention because Flick looked birdie at that point. For once, we were on flat ground at the bottom of that gorge, walking some of the quail country in that area. And Flick starts getting birdie, and then he hits a point, and trying to get you up, but you're 100 yards away. So hopefully Flick will hold that point. And it's valley quail, everybody. So they are inclined not to hold still for a pointing dog all that well. But you were coming up, I was coming up, I watched Flick. He realized, oh, wait a minute, the birds have moved, so I'm going to burn rubber towards the next spot where I think, oh, there it is. Slams a point, actually kicked up a little dust cloud when he hit the ground on the last step. Man, he was motivated. And you were almost in range when 6 chukars got up. Not quail, chukars. And I got lucky and killed one, but it happens to be the same one that you were hoping to get lucky and kill, wasn't it?
I was in range. It's just you killed the bird I had on a beat on before I...
and
SOL. But
yes, I think that's the last we saw those chukars, wasn't it?
Yeah, we didn't see. Actually, I think that's the last chukars we saw. We heard some up in the, talking up in the hills, but they were on the other side of a place where we couldn't get to them.
Yeah, and we'll have to look again at something, some kind of data source that might get us over there in one way or another, because I think every valley quail we flushed went that direction as well. Not that they haven't figured it out over the generations.
We to our credit, we didn't pull the trigger when they were flying the direction we weren't going to be able to get a retrieve. So
yeah, that worked out pretty well for a change.
For them, yeah.
So
for us. So anyway.
So I could talk all day about the highlights on my end, but what about on your end? What else comes to mind? What are the things you've told everybody about since we got home a couple days ago?
Oh gosh. Well, of course we've got pictures, so that those, like you say, the wild burros was very. That's the first time I had seen those. We've seen wild horses when we were out together before, but hadn't bumped into the wild burros, and they were fascinating and very did not seemingly shy at all. But that was very cool. Just the fact that we've had trips on any number of occasions where we didn't get many birds, and this time we had brought stuff home in the ice chest and saw a lot of birds that we did not get. They're still out there, so that's nice to feel successful that way. The music in camp was a nice change that we haven't done that very much over the years, and so I really enjoyed playing a little guitar and hearing you
try to play guitar.
Well, it's a different style, but it's something. It's a different from what I do, and I do something different from what you do, and it's cool to have them both. And you do a nice job. So
we never did. Yeah, we spent maybe 2 years together in music school before you graduated. And we might have played in a big band together once or twice, but that's about it. All of our other playing together has been after 11 beers in your man cave, playing instruments that are so old nobody could make them sound good.
Well, that was part of the charm, I'd like to think.
I agree. I'm looking at those photos now because those donkeys. So far, everybody loves those wild donkeys. They're so fuzzy. If your dog, or maybe if you have a horse, a horse that gets a winter coat. These guys had that winter coat already, and it was just so puffy and cute. But I'm looking at a shot that you took of me, and there's an incredible mountain range in the background, and it's probably 30 miles away. We're looking east, but we're up there in that big bowl that we thought on a really windy day, where are chukars going to be? Well, they're not going to be, like you said, on top. They're going to be hunkered down behind something. And sure enough, I'm walking up on this boulder that's about, the size of a travel trailer, maybe even bigger. And in that situation, in a couple different places, we found those birds. Imagine if a bird could kind of raise up their shoulders and stick their head down and just try and stay a little bit warmer. That's what I think they were doing out there. I don't think we ever shot any of those. I had the best shot on one day when they got up right in front of me, and I missed with both barrels. But
that's and again, it's always fascinating to me that there was two separate covey rises that we got on what seemed to be pretty open, cover free, and we walked right up on top of those birds. That we got a good point both times from Flick, and when those birds got up, you probably could have reached out and grabbed one if you'd known it was there, and we did not have any idea that those birds were holding right in front of us until they flushed. And one time you got a bird, and the other time I got one, and but we won't say how many times we missed on either of those rises. But it's fascinating to me that in country that seems, stark and barren, that there's still possible for those birds to be right in front of you, and you don't know.
Well, absolutely right. And I say the same thing about pheasants. How could a bird that is so gaudily dressed become camouflage in any cover? But I'm looking at yet another picture that you took here, and it's a chukar in your hand, and you're holding it up in a way that, the vegetation in the background and the boulders in the background and the foreground, it's like a dead alkali brush or something like that. They're all those colors. The birds are all those colors. And
yep.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's why I never find them.
So they're well camouflaged in spite of the bars and the stripes and the red legs and the red bill. They're still managed to be invisible.
You know, I'm going to suggest that we both hereby create a testimonial for chukar hunting. If we were going to do that, create a radio commercial for chukar hunting, what would be in that commercial?
Well, is the classic comment, the cliche that the first time you hunt chukars for fun, and after that it's always for revenge. That they will make you work hard, but when you finally get some, it's a big payout. It makes it worthwhile.
It does, and all you want to do is more after that, because you can always get more revenge. You know, one of the things that I love about it, number one, is still being able to do it. I just got off the phone not an hour ago with the physician's assistant who wants to open up both of my knees, by the way, and work on those. But at this point, we're still doing it, and it's, there's a lot to be said, and there are people who think that that's all there is to it and pride themselves on their physical attributes in regards to chukar hunting, but that's just part of it. I'm grateful that we can still do that.
Oh boy, it's sometimes you wonder just how long this can go on, but I think, well, I'm getting ready to leave on my deer hunt in another week, and I think you can do it as long as you keep doing it and you don't kill yourself in the process. You can always find a way to pare things back a little bit. There's a lot of guys out there who drive around on side-by-sides these days, and I'm hoping that we can stall it off as long as possible before we get to the point where that's the only way we can do it. But when we get to that point, then I'll be willing to compromise my principles and buy a side-by-side.
There you go, and I'll be right with you there. So get a four-seater so we can put a dog in each of the back seats as well. Oh my, we could do this forever. We will do it forever again. We got another date. This has been so fun. We're going to go hunting again together in the same general area real soon, and we'll talk about that one as well. But in the meanwhile, I really ought to do this more often, put my friends on the podcast, because it makes it even more fun. So that's my friend David Cohen, the right speaker. I'm Scott Linden in the left speaker. You stick around. I've got a lot more to talk about. I've got some news. I got a prize for you. I've got a few other things that we're going to talk about. But I'm going to turn my music school buddy David Coe loose to go, maybe pick up that Ophiclyde and play a couple scales on it. All right?
All right. Thanks. Good to talk to you, Scott.
Take care of yourself.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Have you had that kind of conversation with one of your hunting buddies yet this year? Well, I hope so. And if you haven't, I hope you have one real soon. The doing it is one thing. The getting ready for it is another. The talking about it afterwards, yet another. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and we busted out a few bottles of single malt. Enjoyed some of that. I think I'm making a convert out of Dave, although we did have quite a few other things while we were there as well. Hey, this part of the show is brought to you by Dr. Tim's Natural Performance Dog Food, DRTIMS.com. Use the code UplandNation and you'll get 30% off your first order. And believe me, in fact, I sent an email to Tim not a week ago. I said, he is looking so good. He is buff. And partly because, and mainly because, I should say it that way, of the diet he gets from Dr. Tim. We use the Momentum formula, 35% protein, 25% fat. Flick burns it just like a steam engine. There is no fat on that guy. In fact, I have to work hard at putting more fat into him so that he doesn't go all to skin and bones during a hunt. But one thing Flick does not get from anything that Dr. Tim has to offer is an artificial preservative. Now, they go by various names, but they have to tell you that they're artificial preservatives, so check the label of your own dog food. And if they have those in there, know that sometimes those same preservatives are part of a pesticide or an antifreeze. Yeah, you heard me right, poison. Learn more about all of the ingredients in all of the formulations of Dr. Tim's Natural Performance Dog Food at DRTIMS.com. I'll bet I'll make a convert out of you as well. Free delivery, right to your porch, DRTIMS.com. Promise you a little news. Hey, they do have a language. We just don't understand it most of the time. Dogs bark differently depending on the type of animal they are seeing at the moment. I found that fascinating, and I'm not surprised, frankly. This study was published in Nature Scientific Reports. It shows that for two kinds of hunting dogs, they were exposed to 4 different kinds of animals: wild boars, red fox, rabbit, or birds. Didn't say what kind of birds, but they would change their bark pitch and intensity. In fact, the more threatening, or at least the perceived threat of the critter, the deeper and louder their barks. So I guess out there in chukar country, if you hear a deep, loud bark, you're looking at a coyote or a mountain lion. So you heard about our opening weekend. How about your own? I asked in the Upland Nation Insights newsletter, and I know some are just opening. Maybe you haven't gotten out yet. Whatever your opening weekend is, how was it? Well, almost 12% of you said it was epic. 18% said it was as I expected. 16% said it was worse than I expected. And the rest of you haven't gone yet. Well, here's your invitation. Get out there, enjoy the heck out of it, have a great season. I also asked at Facebook, on both the Wing Shooting USA and the Upland Nation Facebook pages, show us one picture that sums up your opening weekend. And I got some great ones. John J. O'Connell IV said, "Snow and mud, hard to see and chilly, but found birds." And I see that. Yeah, we had about the same thing overnight once out there in northern Nevada, but it didn't stick, and we had sunshine. So we beat you on that one, John. Mike and Erica Carr sent me a picture of what looks like some kind of a stew with mushrooms and rice and some... I shouldn't be looking at that right now. I'm so hungry. Mike Wise sends a picture of his short hair with a cliff in the background that I think I recognize. Mike, were you there too? Did you see that place I call Fake to Glyph Point? Sure looks like it. I hope you had a good time. Dale Charles. Okay, yeah, Dale, I'm working on that. Trying to get Wing Shooting USA back up and running, so keep in touch. And then finally, Terry McElray sends a picture of his, I'll call it a reddish yellow lab with a shotgun and let's see, what is that? That is 2 dead ringnecks in front of his yellow lab. So it sounds like you had a good time, Terry. Keep up the good work. All right, I promised you a prize. And believe me, it came in handy over the weekend. We both used it a lot. That Peet boot dryer. It's up for offer. If you can answer this question at the end of the month from all the correct answers, I'll pick one at random and send somebody a Peet boot dryer. Message me on Facebook. All the Facebook pages work. I get all those messages every day. So just send me your answer on Facebook and I'll add you to the list. What game bird variety has the first name Gambles? All right, so what kind of bird is it that has the first name Gambles? Good luck and stay in touch on that. Final part of the show here is brought to you by FindBirdHuntingSpots.com. Got new material every week, and let me remind you that if you haven't gone out yet, or you went out and you forgot something, the Ultimate Upland Checklist is right there. Feel free to download it and use it so that you don't forget your dog, your shotgun. That's you. I'm talking to you, Dave, or anything else on your next trip. Thank you, my good friend Dave Coe from music school and everywhere else we've went together, for being on the podcast. Thank you for listening, everybody. Please tell your friends. That's how we grow, one listener at a time. You want to learn more? Check in at the Wing Shooting USA or the Upland Nation Facebook pages. And I sure wish you'd take a look at the Patreon page and support us in one way or another. Well worth your while. Thanks to all of those who have left ratings and reviews, including TK Hot Sadie. Hey, finally, a name I can pronounce. I'll leave you with this. The next in the series of dad jokes. How does dog stop a TV show? Oh, come on, you know this one. He presses pause. I'm Scott Linden. Thanks again for listening. Until we talk again next time, see you in the field.